Good. So we're going to go over how to set crack pressure and understand a little bit more about the system. I like people to understand what we're doing instead of just telling them what to do. But so this is an upgraded wastegate that we're coming out with. The old gate we had works really good, but it seems like throughout the years Can-Am has changed the thread pitch of the clevis attachment to the wastegate arm. So I guess it was only right to actually come up with a solution that does the whole thing and is consistent. So the reasons for changing crack pressure is, you know, a general rule of thumb is, say you want to run 17 or let's just say 16 pounds of boost. To achieve 16 pounds of boost, you would need about 8 psi of wastegate spring. And when we talk about like 8 psi is if you took the boost controller off and ran a vacuum line directly from the turbo to the wastegate, you would make about 8 pounds of boost. That's the lowest boost you can technically run under full load. But when we remove, so when we say we want to run 16 pounds of boost and the boost controller's in line, essentially what we do is completely cut off the boost source to the wastegate canister. And now we solely pull the wastegate open naturally. As you can see, we can just pull this thing open solely off back pressure. So, you know, generally we're within a 1-to-1. Like if we have 8 psi of boost pressure, we have 8 psi of back pressure. And this is like, it's way more technically advanced than that, but you know, this is just a general rule of thumb, how this normally works. So to overcome the spring at 8 psi, say we would need 16 psi of back pressure to actually pull this thing open and limit it. So when we, and that also limits the maximum amount of boost you can run. So if we set this to 8 psi of crack pressure, you run with a line directly to the canister from the turbo, we run 8 pounds of boost. The maximum amount of boost you can run is about 16. Generally, when we're pushing turbos a little bit lower, our back pressure is less than 1-to-1. So you could technically say run 17 or 18 pounds of boost on that crack pressure under the right conditions. So it's like not exacts, but that's generally how we look at it. So like our 150 package would run, say, 7 psi of crack, because we normally target about 14.5 pounds of boost. And these are pretty general terms because the ECU is controlling boost. If you get a like a P0299 or like an underboost code, it's likely that it's not enough crack pressure. And relying 100% on this MightyVac, after playing with these for a while, they are not 100% accurate all the time. So if you think critically and diagnose it yourself quickly, if you're not hitting, you know, if you're not hitting the boost target, and another thing to note on here is like the boost pressure number that is displayed by the Power Vision is taking into account barometric pressure. And we target boost based on an atmospheric pressure. So our boost target doesn't necessarily have baro part of that equation. So like say I target 34.7 psi absolute, and we're at sea level, or you know, something around sea level where it's 14.5 baro, you would take 36.7 or 34.7 and subtract that 14.5 or 6, and you would essentially be at about 20 pounds of boost. But if your baro if you go up 5,000 feet or whatever and your barometric pressure changes to 12, you would take that target minus 12. So your boost displayed might be a little bit higher. Those are things to look at. So like people like, oh, I think I'm under boosting, but they're literally at like sea level, you know, zero feet above the water. Their boost shown is going to be a little bit lower because there's just more, because you're still making all that boost and you're making that power. That's a big thing to look at. So I'm gonna show you how to set this crack pressure right now, just so you understand like what we're trying to do here. I don't really know. I just put this wastegate on. I just put the arm on the flapper, just put this thing in, turned it to some number. I don't know where we're at. So get the nipple on there. Let's see here what we're gonna. So it's a lot easier on the bench, but you've seen it just move. So now this thing is loose. We no longer have tension. So this would be pretty much what we consider crack pressure. It's 11 psi. And an easy way to adjust this, say if you wanted 12, right? You can just set this thing to 12-ish. Now we're past it. So we need to go in a couple turns. That's basically 12. Our flapper's pushed back. We're good there. So now when you take pressure off, this thing has a lot of tension. And you can see how much it comes back. You'd have to pull this thing on there to get it. So you don't need to break any of this stuff like when you're playing with this. You could take it off. It's not a big deal to slide this thing off and adjust it for the most part. Without it being on this flapper, because sometimes these lock nuts are really, really tight. So you can either grab this by the end or grab this and loosen that up so you don't break the clevis. I've seen guys break this off the turbo. It kind of turns into an ordeal when you can no longer easily connect your wastegate to the flapper. So, and that's another thing, is you guys might not see this, but this is how we control boost. So this flapper, this hole connects to the volute of this turbo. So when we want to control boost, we leak pressure out of that volute. So that's what we're doing with this, is we're just, controlling the amount of pressure inside the volute. So that is, the basics. Say this setup here for, a 200 car, will normally set crack pressure around 10 psi. So we're gonna loosen this up a little bit. I'll set this thing to about 10. It's pretty good. And you can lock that in. You put your C clip or R clip or whatever setup you have. If you have the OEM setup still, that's fine. Another reason that you could be getting an underboost code or like an underperforming vehicle, and you keep trying to add crack pressure to it to achieve that boost pressure, is a boost leak. So this system here, this turbo's spinning, and if you have a boost leak, it's got to spin a hell of a lot faster to achieve the boost pressure that we want. And to drive it faster, the only way to do that is to drive more exhaust through that turbine wheel instead of wastegating it out. So you keep increasing crack pressure up and up and up, thinking that is really what is causing your underboost situation, but you're driving all the exhaust from the engine through that volute. You're spinning the turbo way faster than it needs to spin to achieve, a target boost pressure, when what's happening is you're essentially just blowing out this air into the atmosphere instead of having it go through the engine. So in a turbo vehicle, a boost leak test is something that should be performed like arguably when you buy the machine, but that's up for debate. I mean, when I bought my RR brand new, first time out, I blew a coupler off, and that would have been a boost leak before the coupler blew off. So KWI machined up his own boost leak tester with a gauge on it. So, generally speaking, if you're running 20 pounds of boost, you want to be able to boost leak test this system, your entire intake track from turbocharger all the way to the engine, to 20 pounds of boost. That's our general rule of thumb. Obviously, when the boost pressure gets really high, it's pretty exciting when you boost leak test a vehicle to 50, 60 pounds of boost and this thing wants to blow off it. But essentially you would put this on there and you would apply pressure, just like you're filling up a tire, through your Schrader valve and put it up to the pressure your tune calls for. So, you know, general rule of thumb, 20 pounds of boost, and you want to make sure that every connection possible has no leaks. If you see this thing moving and you are going to be leaking some pressure past the rings, your engine at that exact position, some valves might be open. So if you just can't build pressure at all and you hear it just going out the exhaust, then you need to turn the engine. You could just take the clutch cover off and rotate the clutch just to a point where you actually get the valves to seal so you can do a proper boost leak test. But this device here, if you could verify, I would probably put money on it that if you couldn't build boost, you're trying to adjust crack pressure up and up and up and you couldn't do it, you either have a boost leak or you have a major restriction to your turbo. Like, that's the most common thing that we see in the X3s, is your air filter's filthy dirty or you have a major boost leak somewhere. When you do this test, if you know you have a blow-off valve or anything like that and it's kind of hard to figure out where it's coming from, you can just get, we normally just put like water with some dish soap in it and shake it up a little bit. And if you spray it on a, you know, something that you feel might be leaking, that you'll see the bubbles come right out. Like, it's clear as day when you do that. So we just kind of wanted to go over how to set this, you know, within reason. We're gonna, you know, all of our tunes, if you have a question about crack pressure, we list the crack pressures on our website. And if you look hard enough, you'll see it in the tune description. When you actually load the tune up, I'll normally put it at the bottom of the tune description. And I would like to stress that it, you know, the exact number isn't as important as like the rest of the system. If we call for 8 and your Mighty Vac, this gauge is 1 PSI off and it's actually 7, you might underboost, and you know, just add a turn or two to this, check it, you know, set it to the next PSI up. And if you're still under boosting, then it might be worth it to look at to see if your filter's dirty or do a boost leak test. If you've been playing around with the intercooler, adding intercooler pipes and blow-off valves and hoses and tubes all over the place, it's definitely something to invest in and make sure that your system's closed up. And you will no doubt be making more power because you don't have to work this turbo as hard to make the pressure. So we wanted to go over that. The boost leak test really isn't talked about a lot. People believe that their system is completely sealed up because they tighten up all the clamps. And we've been doing this for a long time, and more times than not, I'd say 75 to 80% of the time, someone just brings the car in and says they don't have any boost leaks. And we'll find at least 1, maybe 2 to 5. You know, like, stuff will be leaking everywhere. So thanks for watching. We're gonna put up some more informational videos, and stay tuned. Thank you.